Animal Crossing has had a deeper effect on my life than I ever thought that it would just by judging it by its cover. When the first one came to America in the early 2000s, something spurred me to rent it from Blockbuster, and it didn't take long for me to buy it afterwards. There was something so relaxing and comfortable about it, and it quickly became a game that I wound up spending nearly every day playing for a while. It just felt like an adventure every day, like something new was going to come around to discover. As the years passed, the various sequels found their way into the world, and each one was better than the last to me. Wild World suddenly turning the village into a round playground blew my mind, and it instantly prompted me to buy one of those Nintendo Wi-Fi sticks to visit my friends. City Folk bringing a more urban flair to an otherwise rural game was amazing. It brought new shops, new things to do, and even allowed you to bring your character and catalog over from Wild World. New Leaf's mayor system had me planning out new developments and areas with my younger brother, and the city from the previous game was refined and improved to a point where I had faith that the next game would definitely be the best game yet. I mean, really, there was no indication that I would ever think negatively of the franchise at the rate that it was progressing. Until New Horizons came along. I know what I'm getting into here. I know that there's going to be a lot of disdain towards the idea that I could possibly think that New Horizons is a lesser game than its predecessors, especially when the general idea is that Nintendo will patch in the missing parts. But this isn't a conclusion that I suddenly jumped to right as the game released. It isn't a product of me going, how can I piss off as many people as possible? It's honest to God a severe disappointment that's been building up for a while now, and I think that 3 months is a long enough period of time for me to really dig into why I think that New Horizons is a game which got pushed out way too early, even with the inevitable updates. All of this is coming from a die-hard Animal Crossing fan, someone who, as a 27-year-old adult, got giddy with excitement at the announcement of the game. So I'm going to break this into parts and try my best to present this in a pretty clear-cut way. I think the meat of the game is probably the best place to start here. Simply put, this is the fastest I've ever gotten bored with an Animal Crossing game. In the first month, in which I played 60 or so hours, or 2 hours a day, I paid off my house, terraformed my island to my fitting, received a 5-star rating, and upgraded all of the shops to their current max forms. This is an insane degradation of things to do, and I honestly can't believe I'm sitting here in May and June and going, I guess I'll see who's visiting my island today? I mean, think about it. Why on earth does the latest game in the series have the least amount of shop upgrades? In the very first game, Nook's store could be upgraded 3 times. In the second and third, this was also true. And in the fourth game, Nook's store could be upgraded 4 times. In New Horizons, we got 1 upgrade. That's it. If you're saying that they'll patch in new upgrades, then yeah, you're probably right. But this isn't a $30 game that might get a price increase when it's finished, it's a full-price Nintendo Seal of Quality game. This is also the fastest that I've ever completed my fossil collection in any game. And do you know what I got for it? Nothing. Absolutely nothing at all. This is the part where I say, but you get all of this other stuff from other games, but you actually don't. Even in the previous game, you only got an exclusive wallpaper, so what's there to complain about? Well, it seems really obvious to me that there really should be a decent reward in the form of a statue, a plaque, something for completing your fossil collection. It's been long enough, and New Horizons should be the game that's picking up the slack, not conforming to the previous games. And on top of that, I really had no way of telling which fossils I was missing at first other than checking every single sign in the museum. Why doesn't Critterpedia have a fossil section? Or an art section? Holidays and events are something they've been slowly patching in, which would be fine if they didn't outright suck. I know it sounds harsh, but please tell me why the Easter holiday made me avoid fishing for nearly all of April. Why does the wedding season in June have me doing literally the exact same thing every day? Why did the Earth Day event consist of almost solely gaining a single Nook bonus miles activity every day in addition to patching in one of the least desirable NPCs to show up and take away a slot from one of the more favorable ones? Leif had his own shop before, and now I have to hope that he's not sitting in my town square every day. The game already has 2 days off for KK and Small Turnip Lady, so getting Leif, Sahara, Gulliver, and Kix just feels bad. Everyone who's played a version of Animal Crossing can tell you that your villagers, along with other NPCs which you converse and interact with, are the cornerstone of the series. They all have their own personalities or are part of a personality type which brings the game to life. But all of the fun of interacting with them hinges on one simple thing: their written dialogue. And New Horizons easily brings some of the most dull and uninteresting dialogue of the franchise. Don't get me wrong, villagers do say a lot of cute things. But I've come to expect that from them. It's been 18 years and villagers being cute is a given. And after the first week or so, it becomes very apparent that they don't really have much to say. Having multiple villagers of the same personality type becomes grating, as I listen to my first cranky villager tell me how his bones ache, and then the next one says the exact same thing. Yes, it's cute the first time around, but it's ridiculous at this point, as I wonder if I should just bypass talking to most of my villagers and continue on with Animal Crossing's variant of World of Warcraft daily quests. The repetitiveness of talking to nearly anyone is an absolute slog. And villagers say the exact same stuff all the time, especially when you're gathering a DIY from them, in which there's absolutely no variance to what they say. But the worst part about it is the sheer amount of potential that there is when it comes to giving all of these different NPCs more personality. Even having something like Blathers being lost in thought and reflecting on how he got into being a museum keeper, or him thinking about how his sister is doing, or something like that would go a long way towards making these characters a lot more endearing. I'd love to see something like Leif getting inspired by the fishing tourney and decide that he's going to have a planting tournament. It consists of you planting 3 whole flowers in 3 minutes, which seems really quick to him as a sloth. Then he gives you a prize and that's it. It's just a random event that could happen when Leif visits. Another example which comes to mind to flesh out the actual villagers is each personality type having a couple of different story arcs which could be randomly assigned to them. Maybe the sisterly type has an arc where they're worried about a relative back home, but they don't really want to talk about it much at first. Or maybe they have one where they're being overly controlling towards another random villager in an attempt to protect them. Maybe the cranky personality type has an arc where they're being particularly cold towards other villagers until you throw them a surprise party or something. The cranky personality in particular stands out to me as not keeping to its namesake in this game. Sure, they're a bit more boomer than the other personality types, but they're still very friendly right from the start. This trend actually started in New Leaf and seems to be pushed even more towards the shallow end in New Horizons. The personality just seems watered down to me, and it feels pretty much the same as every other personality type in the game, just with its own basic set of dialogue. There's really no getting close to a cranky animal like you could before, where they started out by being very serious and curt with you and wound up really opening up after a while. The very slow and arduous process of interacting with certain NPCs only weighs the game down more. You can mash to make the dialogue go faster, but buying from Sahara is mind-meltingly slow. You talk to her, you pick out which rug you want, she tells you that's her favorite size, and then you hand her bells and she hands you a rug. Then she explains the ticket system in which you can exchange 5 tickets for a mysterious carpet or wallpaper. If you buy every size of rug, you repeat this process 2 more times. After accumulating 5 tickets, she asks you if you want to exchange them. She gives you 6 tickets total, which causes you to pile up the extra ones at your house every time until you remember to bring them to her when she's around again. Then on top of that, you go through another set of dialogue to buy carpet and wallpaper. There really is no reason to not have a proper shopping catalog box to mass purchase what you want and then move along. This same tedium affects the changing room at the Able Sisters shop, as you're only allowed to purchase one type of clothing item at a time. So if you see a set of shirts that you want different colors of, you go into the changing room, Mabel speaks to you, you pick out your shirt, meme shirt, meme shirt, meme shirt, meme shirt, meme shirt. You pay for it, the game asks you if you want to wear it out, you come out, and then Mabel talks to you again. Then you do the whole thing over again for every color of shirt that you want. In addition to all of this is the fact that I can't always remember what colors that I bought before, and there's no indication of what I own already, so sometimes I wind up buying extras of something that I owned. Flying to another island, talking to Gulliver, and talking with Flick/CJ during the bug-off or fishing tourney is more of the same monotony, and I won't run through the processes, but it really is silly that no one thought to speed all of this up in a more convenient way. Like I mentioned before, I finished paying off my house completely in the first month of playing. You could argue that I just got good at making money, but I also felt like there was nothing else to do, and that this was just my primary focus. A lot of the money I needed to complete this task was earned through the stock market. The idea of turnips are great, and it's fun to play the market, but Nintendo hasn't updated the way that they're gone about in the age of information sharing on the internet. You can't sink your money on expanding a room, or buying Gracie furniture, or buying new community buildings like you can in New Leaf, or even something new like upgrading villager houses. And this really hinders the concept of saving money for a particular thing, because really there's only 1 or 2 things that you can do with it. It's not like Nintendo didn't realize the potential for turnip money either, as one of the Nook milestones is to sell 10 million bells worth of turnips, which is far more than the 5.7 million bells required to fully upgrade your house. The number required here is also a fair amount less than the 7.6 million bells required to fully pay off your house in New Leaf. Nook Miles were introduced to give players something extra to do and work towards while they play, and this system worked great during the first month. Now it's almost completely redundant and almost laughable with how little there is to do with your miles. Sometimes it's more of a chore opening the app on my phone to redeem my 200 miles plus task that I just completed rather than just leaving it be. A rotating shop of special Nook Miles items beyond just seasonal stuff would be a great boon for players who have hundreds of thousands of miles. You could even make them cost upwards of 20,000 miles each, and a lot of people would have no issue picking up whatever that month's specialty items are. The system itself is fine, but the execution leaves a lot to be desired. Unfortunately, New Horizons follows the ongoing trend of putting the ABD in a location that differs from the actual store, which is a real shame considering that we have a cell phone in this game. It's even more ridiculous that something like the shopping cart existed in City Folk, but even in the latest game we still have to go to the town hall to withdraw money in order to shop. When you consider the fact that you have an app on your phone that allows you to shop in your catalog from anywhere, but you still have to have the physical bells on you, it really takes the nonsense to new heights. What was really neat in the previous entries was the part where you got gifts from the Bank of Nintendo just for saving a certain amount of bells. I can't tell you how hard I worked to earn my different colored feathers in City Folk, but for some reason that little gratification was all the reward that I needed to keep working my ass off to make more money. With New Horizons, the sentiment for saving money at the Bank of Nook is essentially who gives a shit, and I went from shaking all of the fruit off my trees and making sure to maximize my turnip profits to not worrying about money at all. Apparently, Tom Nook's hostile takeover of the Bank of Nintendo really did cut all of the expenses of sending people tissues and piggy banks for choosing to use their banking service. Maybe this is all just a lesson about monopolies. Crafting seemed like a good idea on the surface, but when you get to the later stages of the game, it's the biggest chore. It feels like over 80% of the furniture can be crafted from resources gathered by hitting rocks or chopping trees. And by late game, you're sitting on a stock of wood, iron, stone, and other random bits of nature, making crafting a tedious sprint to your house to grab a few materials and transforming them into whatever you're trying to make. Or if you're like me, you decide to chop wood and hit rocks anyway despite knowing that you can run back to your house, adding to your already large collection of materials. It just seems so simple to link your home storage to workbenches, and this really basic quality of life change is nowhere to be found. Almost nothing I've crafted has felt like an achievement. I'd say that the hardest DIYs to complete usually involve gold, random junk bits, or rare flowers, but even then most of them aren't jaw-dropping in their appearance. The only fixes I could think of is either going the more convenient route of being able to purchase an app with your bells or miles which mass auto-crafts things that you've crafted before, or the more difficult but rewarding route of being able to attain rare DIYs from a DIY vendor NPC, while using vast quantities of bells/Nook Miles to attain the rarer DIYs. The entire idea of using bait to spawn fish instantly is a decent one, but it's weighed down heavily by the crafting system. Not only do clams take a lot of time to dig up in larger quantities, but they don't stack in your inventory, and it also takes a stupid amount of time to craft them all due to the fact that there is no mass crafting system in place, causing you to have to go through a plethora of dialogue boxes every time. This isn't your average, oh, Animal Crossing takes a lot of patience, so keep catching those sea basses type of grind. This is a Korean MMO, spend 10 minutes mining every chunk of ore in a mine type of grind. Even your golden tools are crafted, which wouldn't be as big of an issue if they didn't also break for some reason. I get it, durability is fun, but it really doesn't belong in a game that doesn't have combat. Hell, even thinking about it being part of something like Stardew Valley, which does have combat, seems like a less than tantalizing idea. But even still, a golden tool is a golden tool. It used to be something that you earned, that took an incredible amount of time to earn, barring the golden shovel, of course. But the point is, these tools shouldn't break. Hell, one of the main uses of the golden axe was the fact that it wouldn't break. The customization idea is one of the few strands of goodness to Animal Crossing New Horizons. While it was part of the previous entry, it's a lot more convenient in this one, which is great. But it becomes apparent very early on that the game doesn't let you customize a lot of non-DIY stuff solely for the sake of padding the game in the form of collecting the right color of furniture that suits you best. This game cut a lot of furniture sets. Classical, regal, modern, alpine, rococo, exotic, Nintendo-themed furniture. The list goes on and on. I always had a modern room in every game that I played, and it doesn't exist now. Will they have some kind of big furniture update jamboree? Oh, I'm sure they will, but my god, this isn't simply patching in a holiday right before a holiday drops. This is 100% cut content in a game that should have been pushed back further than it was. I can only imagine how much less there would have been had it dropped at its original release date. But even so, while customizing your DIY stuff can be cool, it could go so much further. Why can't I paint my fences? Why can't I unlock patterns for more than just cloth? Even adding these options in the form of special customization DIYs would be a tremendous improvement to the game. Nintendo Online has historically had a ridiculous amount of complaints due to the sheer amount of issues that it has. It's hard to argue against a service that only costs $20 per year, especially when they supplement it with bonus things like free libraries of NES and Super NES games. But you would think that the main focus would be getting the connectivity right first, and this issue very much affects New Horizons as well. They talked up the multiplayer in this game like you could just bring over 7 people onto your island and have fun. But the reality is that it's going to take a good 15 minutes minimum to bring over all of those people, and then if the host disconnects suddenly due to poor internet connection or Nintendo Online being Nintendo Online, there's a high chance that everyone's progress up until that point gets deleted. There's supposed to be a form of autosaving, but it seems finicky at best. There's definitely no manual saving online, and Lord knows that would be the simplest solution even if it means interrupting the game for a minute. There's absolutely nothing more infuriating than helping out someone with their fishing tournament or collecting a bunch of fish in a time zone that's set to a time where you don't normally fish, only for the connection to be cut after 30 minutes of playing and you losing everything. This issue actually occurs even in local multiplayer, which is absolutely abhorrent. I recently popped over to my fiance's town and caught 7 new fish and 2 new bugs, netting me a Nook Miles achievement. We were always the same distance from each other, and yet after about 45 minutes the connection failed and I lost all of my progress. This should not happen. Even when you do get everyone to connect, there's pretty much nothing new to do. In fact, there's even less to do than normal, as you can't find a bug that might make you pass out or affect you negatively, or do any terraforming or designing of the island. Even New Leaf had mini-games to play with your friends on an entire multiplayer island to visit. The steps backwards here are monumental. There's a lot of cool-looking furniture that seem like they could be interacted with extensively. Stuff like arcade cabinets, chessboards, instruments, etc. But there isn't much to them besides what they look like. You can't play an arcade minigame, and you were able to play NES games on the first Animal Crossing and a puzzle game on the 3DS in New Leaf. You can't play the various simple board games like chess, checkers, etc., which would be a cool way to play with other villagers and other players. You still walk up to instruments and play one note, and that's it. Granted, you can play along with a KK track, but it's difficult to do and more fun to watch villagers do. Speaking of watching villagers do things, Nintendo's made a game where they encourage customization of the outdoors of your town, which is really cool. But then you have villagers who might glance or fiddle with a couple of things that you put out, before Naruto sprinting away to go sweep the town square or sit on the floor 3 feet away from the furniture you painstakingly put out for them to sit on. The amount of times I've seen my villagers interact with something that I put outside is dwarfed by the amount of times that I've seen them do yoga somewhere else, sit against a tree, or do some other activity that doesn't involve any of my decorating. This one is a minor gripe, and maybe it's just me, but the music in this game is very lackluster compared to the previous entries. There's something about the constant weird synth which plays during almost every song that drives me crazy. And it's so weird to go, I would rather this game be silent at times, because I very often have a song from a previous game stuck in my head throughout my day-to-day activities. It doesn't seem difficult to remaster older themes or even stick them in as is, and allow you to choose which themes play at which times at some sort of jukebox. I mean, if Smash Ultimate can compile many songs from previous games and franchises, why can't Animal Crossing? This is probably the biggest complaint I have about this game, and it's going to be the final thing I say about New Horizons. There is a sheer lack of improvements from the previous entries. Yes, there's crafting, which is kind of a lateral improvement. And yes, there's terraforming, which is definitely nice for a week or so. And there's Nook Miles, which is a fine idea with poor execution. But that's it. The new stuff that we're waiting on, like swimming in July, is stuff that's already been in previous games. When you see improvements from the first game to the second, like new tools, new made-up holidays, sending letters in bottles to random players, new characters that aren't rehashes of older ones, new buildings like the cafe, observatory, hair salon, the club, the fortune teller, the dream suite, and so on. All of it just makes you go, why isn't there new stuff which affects New Horizons like they affected games that are 7+ years older? We went from having lychee, lemon, banana, mango, durian, and persimmon fruits to having none of those. We had a whole area to visit Mr. Rossetti and his brother. Why is this a thing? We had a locker at the train station, in-depth museum descriptions at every display, gyroids and different colored ores to collect and use with customization. We had a barista minigame.
Introducing a new Pokemon puzzle game. Pokemon Cafe Mix.
Oh, never mind, I guess we have this mobile game now. It just seems really silly to add something like a phone to the game and then not capitalize on the sheer amount of features that it could have. It's practically a modern-day smartphone. The possibilities are enormous. Descriptions of museum collections, being able to call your villagers and ask them where they are, a mock social media app where your villagers post statuses and the like, little mobile games that you can play with your friends, composing mail from anywhere which is then sent over to Dodo Airlines who then mail it away for you, a music app which allows you to play KK songs on the go, and that's just off the top of my head. And I know that there's an argument against the inclusion of some of these things in the fact that some of these do exist in the game in some form or another. Like, why do we need a hair salon if we can just change it now? But at the same time, why not create one anyways with the idea that you can unlock exclusive hairstyles and colors over time? There's a flight system in place to visit things like Harv's Island, and yet we can't fly to a city brimming with shops and excitement. And that's the thing. As much as I've given this game grief for not including a lot of features which older games had, it would probably be just fine had it shipped with a bunch of brand new things to do and explore. The older features are something a lot of people in the community have clamored for, and while they definitely would help, there's room for so much more. And because of this, we're now all looking forward to brand new features which have already existed. With the Switch being marketed as something so innovative and unique in that it's a console that's also a handheld, there's no reason for Animal Crossing New Horizons to not be the most creative game yet. The amount of creativity the Animal Crossing series has the potential to attain is immense. Even today, people are constantly coming up with new ideas for features, quality of life changes, and overall improvements for the game. And yet this game released in 2020 has a lot less to it than it should in my opinion. Will Nintendo patch in a lot of these things? Yeah, probably. But why aren't these features in the game already? The fact is that New Horizons came out way too early. It's still fun to a degree, I still got quite a bit of mileage out of it, but it could be so much more. And my biggest fear is that by the time that it is more, I won't have as strong of a desire to return to it due to the bitter taste that's been left in my mouth already. Or even worse, if a lot of these improvements wind up coming out in the form of paid DLC. The fact is that New Horizons is a $60 early access game that's being patched with monthly features that it should have been boxed with. And I'm really hoping that this doesn't become the trend for new first-party Nintendo titles. Unfortunately, as long as we keep buying these games as they come out, we're telling Nintendo that this is effectively an okay practice. I know this sounds dramatic, but I really don't want to have to continue to look at every major Nintendo game with a scrutinizing eye, wondering if it's a finished product. The content updates we're looking forward to should be brand new ideas, not older ones that have been rehashed. I'm really hoping that Nintendo starts to turn things around. But with stuff like Pokemon Sword and Shield not including all of its previous Pokemon, and Super Mario Party having a whopping 4 entire boards, the least in the series besides Mario Party Advance, it just seems like things are going to be touch and go with Nintendo for the foreseeable future. Thanks for watching. This isn't usually the kind of video I make, but these games hold a large importance to me and I really want to see them thrive. I'll be coming back in a few weeks with my normal content, so no worries. Until then, I have a Twitch where I make characters move around the screen with button presses. I have a Twitter where I make words appear on feeds with button presses. I have a Discord where I insert button press joke. And I have a Patreon. And that's it. Have a good one.